Hello there, students. This is Sociology 1301 with Monica Casella, and this is social stratification. We're going to talk about how groups are ranked by wealth and power and prestige throughout all of these slides. So here we start with some definitions. We have social inequality, which is a situation where people don't have the same amounts of wealth, money, power, prestige. And because of social inequality, we have stratification, which is what puts members of society into groups and kind of puts them in a ranking, like a hierarchy, according to what they have. And this definition goes a little bit further. It talks about how it perpetuates unequal economic rewards. And if you think about power, if you have the power, you have enough power to not give up your power. So it does pretty much perpetuate itself. You would not have stratification if you had social equality. If everybody was equal, you wouldn't be able to stratify people according to what they have. So just keep that in mind as we move further. The first type of stratification I want to discuss is slavery. And so slavery has been around throughout human history. It's when an individual is owned by another individual, or a group of individuals is owned by another group of individuals. And it is the most extreme form of stratification, because if you look at the master and you are a slave owner, you have absolute power. You have all of the wealth. And if you are in the slave group, you have no power, very, very little power. You are considered property. And so, unfortunately, this is still a problem. Despite being prohibited throughout the world, there are more people enslaved today than in world history. And part of that is because we have more people in the world. But another part of that is human trafficking, which has become a very big issue internationally. So you can see how there are extreme levels of hierarchy in this form. Okay, so the next system of stratification I want to talk about is the caste system. And castes are done by heredity, so it's something that you inherit. They're usually religiously dictated, but they're also fixed and immobile. These are historically associated with India, but also related to the caste system of the Spanish colonists. So in ancient India, they had a caste system, and castes were all by blood. You can't suddenly win the lottery and change your caste. There's no mobility. You can't change your caste. Well, actually, there's one way that you can change your caste, and that's to do the moral duty that you have during your life, and then to die of a natural death, right? And then be born into a higher caste as kind of like a reward for fulfilling your duty. So the caste system in India no longer is really recognized, although the ideas and the values still linger. It's still a concept, and there are still people that are in these positions that socialize their families into these occupations. So on top are your priests, like I just said, the Brahmins, and all of their descendants. Also, you have the Kshatriyas, those are your warriors, your politicians, military positions. You have your Vaishyas, who are landowners, merchants, herders, farmers. These people in this caste, the Vaishyas, might have some wealth. They tend to be wealthy. They own land, but for whatever reason, they're not necessarily on the top socially, not in this particular system. So next you have the Sudras, and these are your servants and your peasants. And of course, there is another group that is considered to be outside the caste system, because this group is considered the lowest of the low, the untouchables. So sometimes what happens with the untouchables is they're a product of intercaste pregnancies, right? And so this would be like a child but also because of the labor that they do is often considered inappropriate. For instance, they might deal with dead bodies or animals. Another major issue for the untouchables is making leather. So when you work with leather in a country that honors and has a high moral value to cows, you will definitely be seen as without a caste, right? Completely outcasted. This is where the term outcasted comes from. You're an outcast. You don't have a caste, right? So it goes without saying that the untouchables often live in extreme poverty. And even though this is not something that's recognized any longer, it still exists. So a little closer to home, we have the casta system, the Sistema de Castas, and underneath the kind of disclosure label is a picture. It's a casta painting, and it depicts constructions of racial identity according to Spanish colonials in America. And the one to the right of it, the triangle, is a hierarchy kind of system that talks about how the Spaniards organized the hierarchy based on race. And so it could be a little culturally insensitive and could be offensive. If you don't want to look at it, it's okay. I do think it's interesting the way that the Spaniards had depicted the caste system hierarchy with specific numbers as if it was that rigid. Racial labels had legal and social significance for Spanish colonial rulers, and the existence of the castas as depicted in the painting is now widely contested. So it is a little bit of a debated topic. The casta paintings of the 18th century Mexico show a very fixed system of racial hierarchy, and it's likely the product of the Spanish elitists trying to show their distaste for mixed races, wanting to keep their blood pure. Interestingly, though, by Mexico's independence in 1821, there were over 100 categories of possible racial variations. And so the casta designations were completely abolished. So if you're interested in that, you can go look at those pictures. There are some museums that also show casta paintings, and they are all related to this kind of hierarchy based on ethnicity and mixed race, which we will talk about in the classes to come. Lords and ladies, I bring forth the estate system. Yep. Also referred to as the feudal system when land is exchanged for services. And it happened during the Middle Ages. So all the land belongs to the guy at the top, the king, and he grants a large estate or a manor to the great lords, also referred to as the nobility, for their loyalty and support. And that goes down, the great lords pass it down to the next level, the knights, and then that passes down land privileges to the peasants, the serfs, who actually farm the land and pay rent to the knights. So this is how the feudal system works. The person who gives land to the lesser lord becomes the overlord. So if you ever heard of the overlord, that's where it comes from. The person receiving the land becomes a vassal. So that's why you see the vassals to the king and vassals to the lords. And then, of course, the peasants, they don't actually have any estate themselves, but they are given shelter and protection in exchange for farming the land. So this went on for hundreds of years until the Black Death came, and I think the 100-Year War, where half of Europe's population died, and so there were a lot fewer farm laborers to work in the agricultural field. And so you know that a system cannot sustain itself without food. So the peasant group became a lot more powerful suddenly, and so money began to replace manpower, and the feudal system did collapse. So we made it to the very last type of stratification, which is social class. And so within a class system, this is what we have in America, or at least what we think we have in America. It's also a lot easier to see in places like Britain. The British are known for having a class system that is quite easy to recognize. So within this social ranking, you have economic positions that are based on achieved characteristics. So if you work hard, you can move up. If you make a good financial decision, you may be able to change classes. If you get a good education and a good job, you may move up the ladder. Likewise, you can move down the ladder. So those are the different systems of stratification. In the next video, we're going to cover the different social classes.